from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in Taunton, where the 4-day Women's Ashes Test is taking place, part of the multi-format series in which Australia have been dominant. Nearly a week on, though, from the Men's World Cup final, and everyone around cricket, and even those who might not normally watch cricket, are still stopping each other and saying, have you recovered? How did you watch the final? Where were you? That was an incredible day, exhilarating and yet draining as well. I felt so lucky to be at Lord's. I can't imagine that we will ever see a game of international cricket, let alone a World Cup final, finish like that ever again.
Hi, it's Jim Maxwell. I'm around the place in London. I'm recovering a bit like everyone else, I suppose, from that extraordinary afternoon. And it wasn't just the cricket match. We'll never see anything like that again in our lives. But it was also the tennis at Wimbledon. To think that two extraordinary events should finish so close and at almost the same time on one afternoon. You wanted to be in two places at once, but most of us had an eye on the cricket and were still shaking our heads as the result. And I do have to say, at the outcome, because if ever a match deserved to be shared in terms of the spoils, it was that one. But, of course, they changed the rules for this World Cup.
We'll get into that, Jim, don't you worry.
Yes.
Right. Well, that didn't happen. I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore. I suppose recovery is a good word, Alison and Jim. The Indian fans are recovering not just from the drama of the final, but also a little earlier, licking their wounds after that narrow semi-final World Cup loss. They were a very good unit, just didn't get to the top. But a lot of attention now in our part of the world is on the will he, won't he? On the MSD retirement front. We'll see about that.
There's always questions, aren't there, after a World Cup? It's an end of an era, end of a cycle for many, or maybe the start of something. Well, we're going to get into that, because after 6 weeks and 48 matches featuring 22,412 runs and 677 wickets, the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2019 all came down to a single ball.
It's come to this. Here's the last ball of the World Cup final. Archer bowls it. It's clipped away into the leg side. They're going to come back for the second. The throw is picked up. They throw to the wicket-keeper's end. He's run out, is he? I think he's run out. England think he's run out. England are convinced he's been run out. They're celebrating. It was thrown to the right end, to Butler's end, who had to work hard to take those bails off. England are sure they've got him. Through a tie in the tiebreaker. But it's England's game on more boundaries in the match. New Zealand looked devastated. Guptill's on his haunches. I think he knows, as England do. Here's the replay. Wait for the cheer. We're watching Butler gather the ball. He's got a bit of work to do to take it to the stumps. Wait now, listen. That tells you that England have won the World Cup.
I still can't believe it, even listening back to it now. Incredible. That was BBC cricket correspondent Jonathan Agnew describing the final moments as England became world champions for the very first time in the men's game, pipping New Zealand. One of the most extraordinary games of cricket ever played. So the match itself was tied. The super over was tied, meaning England lifted the trophy by virtue of scoring a higher number of boundaries in the contest. Jim and Cherry, I mean, we built up to this tournament by doing a countdown of the top 10 matches in World Cup history. I mean, we've got a new entry at number 1, haven't we?
Yes, definitely. You cannot believe any game of cricket played in the backyard, wherever you want to think of the game of cricket being played, could end like that. And really, you would think out of this they might have to change the way a match is decided.
Alison, to your question, we absolutely do have the new number 1 best ever World Cup match, the final. Not only for all the cliffhanging drama which was there just all the way through this, so many turning points, and of course, eventually the controversy, which I suppose we'll talk a little more about in a moment, but also because we have a new world champion. amidst a sense of a massive redemption. Imagine England taking the game everywhere around the world for 200 years and then coming back and never winning the World Cup all these years. And of course, this global sympathy wave for New Zealand once again. So, oh gosh, there's so much of it is still floating around, articles still going on, however controversial people might want to make the circumstances. But hey, those were the rules. People signed on to them, and England are the new world champions. Fabulous.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Alex Stewart, he was obviously there. He was working with the BBC as well. He played for England in the 1992 World Cup final, the most recent of 3 defeats the England teams have suffered in cricket's biggest showpiece. And as the 2019 England side stepped up to the podium to collect their trophy, Stewart spoke to our Stumped reporter Sam Sheringham.
Alex Stewart, you've just seen England win the World Cup for the first time and in a super over. Incredible. How do you describe what we've just seen?
How good does that sound? World champions, champions of the world. But, I mean, first of all, you couldn't make it up. You know, the drama, everything that went with it. But it's just great for the game. You know, every single person, I'd hope, in England have been following this. I know tennis was on and everything, but once the tennis had finished, if you're a tennis fan, I hope you turn across on radio or TV to watch it. But honestly, I'm absolutely near enough speechless because I'm so happy for this group of players. Andrew Strauss has to get a mention as Director of English Cricket when he came in 4 years ago and said, right, we're not good enough at white ball cricket. We're going to prioritise white ball cricket. We're going to hand out white ball contracts to the players. We're going to make sure that Test cricket and white ball cricket is very much on a par. And we're going to build, and the target is to win the World Cup in 2019. So from the moment he said that, we saw the progress chart of English white ball cricket start to climb.
And just finally then, Alec, you alluded to earlier, what can this do, this incredible match on free-to-air television for cricket in this country?
Well, this is where the ECB now have got to really be clever, because it could be the best summer ever if and when we go on and win the Ashes as well. So World Cup winners, and now hopefully Ashes winners as well. It won't get bigger than that, so it's a perfect opportunity to push the game, promote the game, get as many children involved in it, make sure that sponsors want to be a part of it, and that there's a real plan to take this game forward, not short term but long term as well, because the development of the game could go sky high now. We saw it with the rugby when Martin Johnson and his boys won it in 2003. We've seen the expectation when England got to semi-finals of World Cup in football and other sports as well. But this for cricket, they will not get a better opportunity.
Well, that's former England captain Alex Stewart, and we'll talk a bit more about the legacy of England's success in a moment. But let's just reflect a little bit more on the match itself. Come the final, I mean, there are so many moments and what ifs to look back on, and one of the most incredible moments in a match that was littered with hundreds of them came in that last over when Ben Stokes was awarded 6 runs despite only running 2. Have a listen to this.
In goes Bolt. It's a full toss. Swiped into leg side. They want to get 2 here, surely. Come on, Adil Rashid. Run. Stokes for the far end. He's desperately getting there. Dives. Now, that came off Stokes. If it goes to 4, there's nothing they can do about it.
That's 4.
There's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah, that was a moment when Ben Stokes inadvertently deflected a throw from the boundary for 4 overthrows. And Stokes had just completed his second run and was then awarded 6, which gave England a vital boost towards their target because they were in big trouble before that moment. The following day, though, the former ICC umpire Simon Taufel flagged up what he called a clear mistake by the on-field umpires. Now, according to him, England should have been awarded just 5 runs, not 6, because the batsman hadn't crossed for the second run at the point when the throw was released. Now, it's pretty complicated stuff. It's a kind of scenario that only cricket can throw up. But Jim, I can't imagine the Aussie media would have lapped up that narrative and fanned the flames, would they?
Well, the social media network, of course, was all over it. I mean, I'm not sure that Simon's right, to be honest. It depends how you look at the law.
Well,
and I think that was
analysed
by a few people too. There's a comma in a certain place, which seems to indicate that if you've started on the second run, even though he obviously hadn't completed it when he accidentally touched the ball and it ricocheted to the boundary. This is the problem.
He ought to know that, shouldn't he? He was effectively the umpire's umpire. He was sort of managing the umpires for the ICC really at one point, wasn't he?
Well, we still have to acknowledge that in sport, everyone makes mistakes. Players make mistakes. Umpires make mistakes. Did they make a mistake or not? There's still conjecture as to which was the right way to adjudicate that particular moment. So it just struck me that at the time, to the naked eye, that's 6 runs.
I've heard some of the current players talking about it, saying, well, actually, they would rather just that scenario as a dead ball, because there is that code of conduct, Char, isn't there, that if the ball deflects off a batter like that, then, and as we saw from Ben Stokes, he was not going to get up and try and scurry another run himself, but the fact it went to the boundary...
Well, he felt guilty, didn't he? He felt guilty about it, and I think that it's still, when he contemplates what's occurred, may affect him if he wants to dwell on it, but
I don't think he will.
He won't now. But at the time, he seriously wanted to give up and say, "Don't give it 4. It's not fair."
I mean, the batting side will take it because those are the rules. Now, if we start talking about rule changes, of course, we'll have to open the whole book up and study every rule in even greater detail and all those little commas and things that Jim was talking about. But to me, I think the critical word is intent. One of the critical words here. I mean, the intent was there 100% to run the second.
Yeah.
And if something interferes in play, which allows the ball to move to the boundary, which is of completely no fault, there was no intent, but conversely, of touching the ball with the bat or any other part. I mean, he wasn't looking at where the throw was coming from. So to me, that is what happened. They took 2, and in the act of taking the second, the ball went to the boundary, 6 runs, thank you. How many things would you like the umpires to keep an eye on? So I really wouldn't blame the umpires at all in this case.
Well, it was a brilliant moment, undeniably. That the viewing figures that came in, they were a little deflating, I thought, ultimately, in terms of the cricket, because the Wimbledon final peaked at 9.6 million, which was seen on the BBC between Djokovic and Federer. And the combined cricket audience for both the pay-per-view and the free-to-air was 8.3 million. So still, more people in the UK watched the Wimbledon final than watched a one-off historic moment of the England men's cricket team winning a World Cup final for the very first time. And to me, a lot of that is in the telling of the narrative, in that, you know, a Wimbledon, it's in the diary, it's every year, everyone knows it's there, they know where to find it, and they've seen 2 weeks of that story develop in front of their eyes. And to ask people to suddenly switch on to a one-off game in a World Cup final, despite the press coverage and people, you know, getting much more coverage in the build-up, that to me is still a challenge going forward. That yes, there is now a balance. If there are going to be some matches and some live cricket, T20s, albeit short-form matches on the BBC next year, is that going to be enough to really build that big wave that the ECB are looking for?
They're dreaming. They're dreaming. 8 out of 38 games? This is all a Band-Aid. Come on, folks. They've lost the plot 10 years ago when they decided to influence the politicians to take it off the A list and give Sky the rights, because that's where all the money was. That's where the money still is. I'm nothing against Sky. They do a wonderful job. But you cannot proselytise your game unless it is available to everyone all the time. And I'm telling you, a classic example of that was when India were playing against New Zealand on the second day, and we were driving around the countryside at the time. I was with my son, and we just, we'll drop into a pub and watch it on TV. Oh, we don't have Sky here, can't afford it. And we ended up, okay, listen to it on the radio. But we were 4 or 5 different pubs in the country. None of them had Sky.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to sound as angry as Jim, but I think it's a pretty serious, severe indictment of where cricket stands in the UK, its country of origin. And of course, Ali, you mentioned the figures going to Wimbledon and cricket, free to air included. And just imagine that Wimbledon didn't really have any partisan flavor. You can argue Federer is a huge name. I love tennis. I watch it as much as I can. So Federer, Djokovic, I can't remember them, either of them being from England. So really, it should have been a national uprising saying our team is in the final. We must watch. Oh, we can watch it free. Let's do it.
Well, don't forget to keep in touch with us throughout the week on Twitter. We are at BBCWS Sport via the hashtag BBC Stumped. And if you don't subscribe to our podcast already, then what are you waiting for? Get off to your favourite podcast app and search for Stumped.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Just before we go, though, I just want to bring you a couple of final bits of news from around the global cricketing community. First, that Zimbabwe's cricket board's been suspended by the ICC for failing to ensure that there is no government interference in its running of the sport. So that's a saga which has sort of reared its head again. And then sadder news is that former Australia captain Ian Chappell has revealed that he's been undergoing intense radiotherapy after being diagnosed with skin cancer. And we understand that Chappell's been responding well to treatment and is hoping to be in the commentary box for the Ashes. Jim, have you been in touch with Chappelli?
I have been just recently to wish him well. I know this has been an issue. I think if you look at most cricketers of his era and the way they conducted themselves on the field, very rarely did they have anything on their head except a cap perhaps when they were batting, and Richie Benaud was the same. So it is an issue for a lot of people, and he's through it all reminding everybody, be careful of the sun. Slip, slop, slap, put a hat on. But I hope he's going to be okay. But yes, he's aware, like all of us, as we get on in life as of our mortality, and he's taking it all in his stride. But I think from the reaction I've had from Ian, he's still enjoying a glass of red wine and he's keeping his spirits up.
He's a tough old Aussie, that's for sure. We've done a lot of work together in the past. Chappelli and I were like this, uncrowned kings of double tennis on the commentary sort of circuit. But he had these things going on his on the back of his palm and on the face and the nose here and there for quite a few years now, Jim Allison. And he kept talking about how he'd gotten them removed, but luckily they were not, what's the word here?
Malignant.
Malignant. And so, the saga continues, but I'm sure he knows how to handle it.
Melanoma is a bad word, yes.
Yeah, but he's handled it before. It's been on for quite a few years. So I'm not, I'm sure he'll see through this with his usual grit.
Yeah, Chappelli was in the commentary team for my first ever international commentary at the World T20 12 years ago in 2007. He's always been a huge support and wonderful company around the cricket circuit as well. So all of us here at Stumped wishing you well, Chappelli, and hope that indeed the radiotherapy does its job. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. Keep in touch with us on Twitter via @BBCWS Sports using the hashtag BBC Stumped. My thanks to Jim Maxwell and Charu Sharma, and to you for listening. Join us again next time. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.